On the evening of March 1, 2002, the heinous murder of 20-year-old Sergei Makaryev was committed at the bus stop, Shalin Theater, in Moscow. The young man was sitting on a bench with his head practically severed, held in place only by his spine. This brutal massacre shocked everyone: relatives, law enforcers and citizens alike. The police put forward versions, but they could not even assume that the boy was stabbed to death with a kitchen knife by a young gym teacher, who became one of the first serial killers of women in Russia of the new 21st century. Moscow, 2002. The end of April. The weather at that time was very warm. On that day, Assistant Commissioner Malygin was on duty at a post near Bolotnikovskaya Street. A young law enforcement officer, who had recently graduated from police school, bent down to pick up a fallen cigarette butt. Among several pairs of feet of Muscovites returning home, he noticed one with a bloody stain on her sneaker. She stopped right in front of his nose. A little while later, a young girl in blood-stained sneakers and a tracksuit walked briskly toward the Nakimovsky tunnel. Not thinking long, the policeman decided to follow the strange girl. Careful not to let her notice him, Malygin headed straight for her apartment. Then he calls for reinforcements. Blinkers, sirens and operatives are already surrounding a faceless paneled house in one of Moscow's dormitory districts. Accident and vigilance of the young policeman helped that day to solve one of the most notorious series of murders of 2000 years, committed by a teacher of the Moscow Technical School of Electronic Technologies, 24-year-old Maria Petrova. Journalists later dubbed her the Zuzan maniac because of the neighborhood where she lived and worked. Maria from childhood suffered from schizotypal personality disorder and was observed by a psychiatrist. But not much is known about her biography. Maria Alexandrovna Petrova was born on May 15, 1978 in Moscow. The girl's father Alexander Petrov was a drunkard, constantly beat his wife and children. When Masha was 4 years old, the man in front of her eyes so beat his wife that she spent a week in the hospital. It was the most terrible 7 days of the child's life. All this time Masha spent in an apartment with an alcoholic who kept drinking vodka. No insidious plans and conspiracies she did not hatch. The girl just went out for an ordinary jog. Maria had a habit of taking a knife for self-defense, memories of harassment of the coach, plus she showed persistent attention to her no longer a young colleague. All this, together with childhood memories of her father, disgusted Petrova from men who caused her only feelings of squeamishness and disgust. When she was calmly returning home, at the stop, Shalom Theater, she was grabbed by the arm by a tipsy guy who turned out to be 20-year-old Sergei Makaryev. He then shouted a swear word at her. Later Maria said that she herself did not realize how further events occurred. She instantly found a knife in her hand, swung the blade at his throat, and then started kicking the guy with her legs. Studying in the 5th grade, Maria enrolled in swimming, but she never built a sports career. After one day she was raped by a coach, the girl abandoned the lessons. However, sports Masha managed to love and therefore became a coach. In the 2000th year Petrova got a job as a physical education teacher at the Moscow Electronic Technology College. There Maria was considered a responsible, hard-working and conscientious teacher who loved her work. At the technical school Petrova created a kettlebell sports section, which many students enjoyed attending. Students, the teacher respected, but sometimes laughed at her. Tall height, powerful torso, muscular broad shoulders, short haircut, rough voice, square and muscular Petrova in skirts and dresses, which she wore after work, looked ridiculous and completely inept at wearing them. Later, recalled her colleagues, Maria was a very calm and balanced person. Throughout her life, she never once raised her voice at students. No one could not even assume that this girl was capable of slitting a person's throat in cold blood. Petrova committed her first murder on March 1, 2002.
As I walked past the place, I noticed a young man standing at the bus stop. He was swaying, very drunk. As I passed by, he grabbed me by my jacket and started calling me names. I grabbed a knife and stabbed him in the throat.
When her anger subsided, the woman returned home, washed her bloody clothes, carefully cleaned the knife, and went on with her normal life. However, there was something new. Now Petrova was walking around the neighborhood not just for her health, but in search of a new victim. On March 27 of the same year, not forgetting the harassment of her colleague, walking Maria tracked down a pensioner, 60-year-old Nikolai Zabin, outwardly similar to her abuser, and killed him in the same terrible way as Makaryeva. Why? Petrova explained it by the desire to hurt a person who looked like her abuser.
After the incident I described before, I had a conflict at work with an elderly man. That is, he showed me excessive signs of attention, and for a long time I was unpleasant. I repeatedly applied for resignation from work to get another job, but I was denied dismissal. And after that incident, when I was molested by that elderly man, I had a desire, not at work, but after work, to cause trouble to some elderly person. And here he was, passing by with a knife. I slashed the neck of an elderly man.
In early April 2002, another body was found by passers-by in the same neighborhood where Zabin had been stabbed. This man, like the two previous victims, had his throat slit to the spine. All the murdered men were not connected in any way. Then the operatives decided that it was the work of a serial killer. After these 3 murders, a series of assassination attempts began. For some unknown reason, Petrova no longer completes the crimes. She strikes, but does not finish the victim, as if someone prevents her from finishing what she started. It is not known how many more victims the ZUZENSKAYA maniac would have had if not for the young policeman Malagin. April 23, 2002, vigilant assistant operative accidentally caught the killer. In the case of ZUZENSKAYA maniac there are 2 murders and 4 attempts. Due to lack of evidence on the last murder, Petrov was not tried. Why did the ZUZENSKAYA maniac suddenly start attacking men? She couldn't explain it herself. Claimed only that she started molesting men when she was drunk, and then said that she had a teenage trauma and it started. Petrova was sent for several medical examinations. All of them showed that the woman was inadequate. According to one of the investigators, Maria very much asked to send her to a colony, not to a psychological clinic. Since the girl understood that imprisonment is for a certain period of time, and compulsory treatment can last indefinitely. Relatives of the victims hoped that the killer would get a life sentence, but their hopes were not realized. In 2003, Maria was declared insane and sent for compulsory treatment in a prison-type psychiatric hospital. Maria Petrova has been in the hospital for 20 years, where dangerous murderers and rapists are held. Despite her criminal past, the ZUZENSKAYA maniac dreams of simple family happiness, finding a loved one and having a child. But her dreams are unlikely to come true. The 45-year-old woman will probably never get out of there.